A champion is one that defends the weak, fights for the sake of others, and gives it their all no matter what. We know these warriors by their names and their titles, but it is seldom that we can understand how they became who they are known to be. For while we may know of their deeds and accomplishments, even perhaps their words, we do not always get the chance to see them become the champion they remembered to be, and how those memories affect the legacy they leave behind. At Space Pirates Science Team, we enjoy talking about a lot of the native biota, machines, and what have you that come to define the history of the known cosmos, but because of the nature of our work, we really don't often get the chance to dive into and explore the lives of individuals that are always caught up in whatever conflict may be based on or in a world. However, I think that in some cases, it is important to understand some individuals that are known in history, but whose lives we know very little about from a personal perspective. For through their eyes, we could potentially look deeper into the world and society they hailed from, and how they and the rest of their kind changed the world and helped to make it a better place, even if they died trying in the process. Today, we are going to be taking a deeper look into one face for this, through the eyes of someone who, as I alluded to already, was genuinely a champion of their kind and will always be remembered as one. This is the story of A-Kul, the last champion of Aether. My name is A-Kul, champion of Aether. I am communicating to you now through the last streams of thought and consciousness left in my mind. It is the least that I could possibly provide to those who seek an understanding of more than just my life, but the history of my race and all that has come through us. I have not been here for much of it, but I know the stories and tales of times beyond. I will share with you now what I have known and all that I can tell as I fade into the light forevermore. It is said in the lore of my kind, the Luminoth, that we were once a race of the stars. We do not know where we came from, to be honest. A shame to me to not know where you come from, to not know what you defend, what you worship, what matters the most to you in life. Our race traveled from star to star, hoping to find a world that we could call our own, but sadly it was not for the longest of times. Do you know how it feels to not have a home? As a warrior, it was never my place to think of such things, only for the lives and peace of my kind, but in these final moments, it is now that I look to our past and understand that we were lost, in a sense. The Luminoth have always desired light in any form, for it is something that gives us power and life all the same, the shining beacons of the great cosmos before us. We would travel from star system to star system, hoping to find a world that would be suitable for us, but everywhere that we would go, we would only find planets that had either already been taken and colonized by others, or posed a threat to us as a species in safety from its denizens. There are other races like us at the time, the likes of the Chozo, Briamak, Yila, and Ekren among them, though not all of the tales and kind have survived to the time of my final moments here. Many of them were known for having a warrior mentality in far gone times, conquerors of planets, systems, even galaxies. But they had reached a pinnacle in their combat prowess and their technology, and now instead sought to link and unify with others, find new homes to make their lives at, and spread their influence through more peaceful manners. The Luminoth had always been a race of peace from the beginning. We never started as a race of war, though we may now have ended as one. We merely sought the light of stars, and through it, we came into contact with many of these races. We exchanged technology, culture, mindsets, and so much more, and we were thrilled by these exchanges. It is only the dark reaches of the ether beyond sight and light that we could dwell for long, the lights of the stars brief in our search. And still, we pushed on, determined to find the home that we sought. Some may wonder why we searched for a place to call home. Why would we not simply live among the stars if that is what we sought? The truth is that we could have settled for that sort of life, nomads that move between star systems, merely living as we could without a permanent place to rest on. I do not know if I could have accepted such a life in those times though. A home is a place that is special because it is yours. It is a home because you can do what you want on it and be what you want on it. Establish a legacy there, a life that will be remembered by more than just those that you share close times with. And when our people saw that the Chozo were starting to colonize other planets and eschewing that sort of nomadic life, we knew we had to do the same. Of all races we saw them as the wisest, so if they believed that it was best for their people to find homes where they could be one with the universe in a physical manner, then we would do the same, and we searched vast reaches of the cosmos for a place to call home. Even so, as much as we searched, we could not find a home, and we started to believe that our nomadic life was to be all that we could ever have. And then, something changed. Something was found. A scout returned to my people, telling them all that a planet had been found that was exactly what we had been looking for, and the moment that we saw the strange beige sphere and its blue illuminated atmosphere, we knew that it had to be too good to be true. And yet, when we arrived on its surface, we found it to be exactly what we had always wanted, what we had been seeking for so long. The lands were calm, gorgeous, and the native life forms were much milder than any we had encountered on so many worlds. And most of all, the planet was rogue, and yet a powerful energy force seemed to radiate from the planet, substituting the place the star would have taken, giving light to the world unlike any other. We did not know what to make of it at first, cautiously examining it, but as soon as we landed on its surface and examined it in person, we knew that this world was ours. We had finally found our home, and we called it Aether. The world was far more habitable than almost any other that we desired to be upon, with vast fertile plains and forests, with glorious oceans unlike any other we had ever found. Still, we were not entirely sure what to expect from it, so in safety, we established high-tech cliffside dwellings, far removed from the rest of the world below, so we could study the planet much more thoroughly. As we found the land to be increasingly habitable, we began to colonize the rest of its surface, settling next in the thick, lush forest of the land we called Torvus, and then the fertile plains, which we called Agon. The greatest leaders of our kind were chosen to lead us into a harmonious life, a sentinel for each of these three areas, and further to act as the prime sentinel for them all. Grand temples were built for the three lands of Agon, Torvus, and our sanctuary fortress, and in the center, we built the Great Temple as a link between these lands. As we were ourselves, we made them into symbols of peace, prosperity, a monument to our accomplishment and our desires for the future. Thus began our golden age, a time of harmony. However, it would not be long until something forced us to take drastic actions to save our home. As we'd soon come to learn, the planet was indeed radiating an energy of some sort, the likes of which we had never seen before. And while it was keeping the planet alive and habitable on the surface, its energy field was chaotic, and it felt as if it was dissipating. If we did not do something to stabilize and regulate it, it might go out of control and either leave the planet or destroy anything living on its surface. Using my race's advanced technology, we built a device called an energy controller, which had the power to gather, harness, contain, and regulate this power, and we shared the planetary energy between the three secondary temples and the Great Temple. Not only did this give us the chance and the power to keep the planet stable and habitable, but we were able to radiate the power manually across the breadth of the planet to keep life growing and thriving, and use it as we needed as a power source. In time, we came to call this energy the Light of Aether, and with it, we would establish a society of peace and tranquility and live our lives as we saw fit. This now is where my story begins. I was born during the time of Vimos, the third prime sentinel of the Luminov, within the temple grounds surrounding the Great Temple. My young life was not that far from what you would expect in any normal society. I had a bit of a rebellious streak to me as a young nymph, but all in good jest. I loved my mother and father dearly, and though I was their only child, I made sure that I would make them proud and be the upstanding citizen that they knew I could be. I had a lot of choice as to what I wished to do with my life, and while I found myself more so enjoying the time with close friends in my studies, and helping my family with their work, making storage containers for the temple grounds area, I originally wished to be an acolyte, a scholar of the Luminoth ways, arts, and science. We did not hold what some would call religious beliefs in a traditional Terran sense, but we did worship the stars, seeing them as beacons of light in the darkness. We understood them not for their mythology but for actuality, and knew that at least some of them there are civilizations like our own out there, either developing or already out there amongst the stars, traveling and searching for something, much as we did once. I wanted to learn more about them, maybe even visit them someday, a thought that was not exactly unfeasible at the time, but I was always told to be patient, for it is best to simply leave them be. We wanted peace, but not all would be so pleasant to meet. A sad reality. I was not able to take the traditional acolyte test as expected at my age, but only because we lost our Prime Sentinel after she gave birth to her own son, and when Jay Gink took the position, I was not exactly seen as a favorable candidate by him. I was less than pleased to hear this, for it was what I'd wished for all my young life, but my rebellious nature and short temper were considered to not be scholarly traits that would make me a good candidate. I was extremely frustrated, and Jay Gink noticed this and took me aside one day. I didn't ask for the attention, but it was given to me, possibly because he found my ambition to be honorable, even commendable. As compensation, he allowed me to apprentice under our chief astronomer Onog, so that I could still see the stars and study them in some fashion. And Onog himself seemed to be fine with it. If anything, he too found my desires to be commendable and earnest, and I fondly remember spending many days with him, cataloging any worlds we could find. It was a simple life, but an enjoyable one, and I could never have thought it could get better. And it did not. For one day, the end of our kind would seemingly be spelled out in the stars. One day, as I was inspecting an area of the sky that I and Onog had not examined before, I saw something that was far smaller than a planet, but as I pointed our instruments at it, they went crazy. The energy readings were beyond astronomical, and I felt terror. Something not just unknown, but extremely energetic, and heading our way. Onog examined the object more closely, and to his horror, he could not tell what it was. But he knew that it was coming to Aether, and it was coming fast. He relayed the information to the Sentinels, and while I was whisked away to my home for protection, the ancient weapons we once used for self-defense in the cosmos were energized by the light of Aether and fired towards the object. They used all the power that they could channel into these old weapons to destroy or at least avert the object, but it was beyond durable, as everything we fired at it simply bounced off. We didn't have time. It was coming too fast. My parents and many other Luminoth were instructed to take whatever food and water we could get and to hide ourselves in our homes, to barricade doors and windows for safety. The energy controllers had been strained by the efforts to deflect the oncoming threat, and with that the environment began to waver. The land was in pain in a sense, and with nothing that could be done to stop it, all we could do was hide. I was so scared, terrified. I had seen it with my own eyes, and though I could not tell what it was, I could feel a darkness in it, something the likes of which I never thought could exist. And as the object grew closer and closer, I huddled with my family and hoped that the light of Aether, our God, our life, our Savior, would survive the impact. And the moments ticked by one, until the entire world seemed to shake, and I closed my eyes with my family, waiting for the end to come. But it never did. The terror amongst the stars impacted the planet brutally, and yet somehow, in its weakened state, the planet managed to hang on. But the world we had once known was gone. The impact had drastically changed everything. The lush plains of Agon were scorched by an extreme heatwave that burned it to the ground, leaving little more than a sandy wasteland, while the impact generated massive storms that rained unceasingly on Torvis, turning the lush forest into a sunken bog. The energy and the debris from the impact blackened the sky, made the air foul. All this made me fear for every life on the planet, and we could only wait through the coming days, hoping that when, and if it was safe to come out, that there would be something left. Anything. In time, the energy field to the energy controllers finally managed to wrestle control over the planet once more, and we are finally able to leave our dwellings. I remember the first time I saw the light again and gazed upon what was left. I cried. Ruins. Nothing but ruins as far as I or anyone else could see. The land was wounded, grievously so, and I could scarcely think of what to even do. The thankful news for all, though, is that no Luminoth lives were lost on that day. I was relieved to learn that there were no casualties, and with the rest I did my best to help my kind try and rebuild in the foul air. It was breathable but stunk of a toxic fume I could not identify, making the work to try and repair our damaged homes and lands more difficult. But what truly made many of us question the event is that the impactor was gone. There was nothing but devastation. No fragments of it could be found, as if it had struck us and just vanished into thin air. Amongst the ruins, we also found there was a massive amount of energy missing from our energy controllers. Only half of the energy was still there, and we knew not what had happened to the rest of it. In addition, strange portals and spatial disturbances started to appear across the land, with some objects stuck in a strange existence of dimensional flux, half their atoms here and the other half somewhere else, inaccessible to us at that time. With all of this happening, I could not even return to my work at the observatory with Onog, though we did speak on the matter several times. We did our best to try and fix things at least. My people created a hydrodynamic station and massive pumps to drain what water we could from Torvis, and we tried to use what light was still left to regulate the climate of Agon to at least keep it from drying out any further. We even developed artificial plants like sandgrass and the Agon Barapod to help the environment recover more quickly. Only our sanctuary fortress seemed to remain unscathed, and our best and brightest went there to plan out a recovery plan fully for us. It seemed that, at least in time, we could try and make Aether a home once more, but much of the damage done was likely irreversible in my lifetime, and it saddened me immensely. And then, one day, they came. I was just assisting my father in putting together a new wall for the Great Temple when news of an attack was reported, with 2 casualties. The moment everyone heard this, I remember them all just stopping cold, right there in their tracks. Something had killed 2 Luminoth. But it was not the horrible monsters that had come to thrive on our wounded lands. No, this was a dark force. A twisted entity that had possessed some of the creatures, mutating them into hyper-aggressive and more durable iterations. Creatures we would eventually come to call Darklings. This darkness started to come out everywhere, and while we did not know where from, our greatest minds quickly deduced that the strange anomalies and dimensions we had observed might have had something to do with it. Eventually, and with some work, we were able to create devices that could actually pierce and force these rifts open, revealing portals to a world somewhere else. What they found chilled the blood of our entire race. A dark, twisted mockery of our own world lay on the other side, a land where the atmosphere itself was more than foul. It was toxic! Merely being present in it choked the lungs and made it difficult to breathe, and the sights of horror never seemed to cease. The missing half of the light of Aether was here, contained in dark energy controllers that kept this other world, dark Aether, stable and in existence. The scouts sent in could not stay in the venomous air for long, but in their brief time there, they found the source of the attacks. A race of monsters that were hell-bent on killing us and stealing the rest of the light of Aether somehow. We called them the Ing. They could not survive in our world, our home, so they possessed other creatures as a way to bypass this weakness to light. Hence why the Darklings were attacking us. We meant no harm to them. We thought perhaps that there could be a chance to coexist, but the Ing had no interest in that. With cunning and intelligence, they pursued our total eradication and the absolute takeover of our world through any means necessary. We, the Luminoth, stood for peace and prosperity, but in this dire situation, as attacks from Darklings became increasingly common, the Sentinels convened and made a plan. We were not going to simply stand back and let that happen. Aether was our home, our only home, and if it was conflict that the Ing sought, then they would get it. we would no longer stand by as just peacemakers. We would fight. We would engage. We would go to war. But we were not ready for it. We never were. The first thing is that many of the jobs that were needed in peace times had to be reassigned to assist with the war effort. I personally started to help with the construction of light crystals from special gems that could be found deep inside of Aether, where the light and its source could reach them cleanly. These gems did not last long, and eventually we had to resort to making beacons instead, which could not hold a steady charge of light energy and thus needed to be manually reactivated time after time as they would run out of power. We had fixed as many of these objects into dark Aether to battle away the darkness as possible, but it was not enough. The source of the Ying's power, as well as the dark worlds, was deathly against us and other creatures of the light. The crystals and beacons would not be enough to abate them forever, even if the light they created did hurt these dark denizens and repel them to a degree. We could not combat them as we desired, so we had to retreat as the Sentinels and Greyest Minds got to work on designing armor and weapons for us, anything that could aid us and turn the tide. By that point, I had reached an adult stage already, and was trying to assist the war effort in any way that I could. I could never look to the stars again through the unstable atmosphere of our raging home if this continued on, and we were not equipped for a long drawn-out conflict. My mother was always worried about me then, fearing that any time I would go out of our home to work or get supplies, that I would be attacked by a darkling or some other foul beast and never return. I would never let that happen, and I did encounter these beasts a few times, but I was not like most. I had a knack for hand-to-hand combat on instinct alone, and from the few times I was attacked by these monsters, I fought with all of my strength and rarely ever got nobly injured. Those above me in class saw this potential, but I was told nothing about it. Not until desperation would start to set in. It was eventually decided upon that the only way we were going to have a chance to truly take back our world was to take the dimensional planetary energy stored in the Dark Controllers and extract it entirely from them, for it was that energy that was holding their world together as well. The greatest of scientists in our kind turned their minds to creating a device that could do just that, but at the same time, we needed more than just that. We needed a way to combat the Ying, and in turn, they began to craft armor that not only hoped to resist the darkness of Dark Aether by infusing it in as a barrier, creating the Dark Suit, but in turn, new weapons would be developed to take them on. At first, it was thought that we could potentially overload them with their own foul power, so they created the Dark Beam, a weapon they believed could settle the score. I was eager to attend the first raiding party, offering myself as a soldier, but although I was known for my prowess in standard combat, I was still deemed unfit for the dangerous work, with Jake Gink leading the charge there with a newly developed weapon. And we did not hear back from them ever again. When scouts were sent to find what had happened, they could only return with a dark beam. It seems that we had been gravely mistaken, and it cost us our Grand Sentinel. In the duress that followed, the son of our third Grand Sentinel, Humulus, was chosen to lead us. Under his direction and care, we instead developed a weapon that would use the light of Aether itself as a weapon, which we called the Light Beam. And indeed, tests proved that it could kill the Ying and the Darklings with great efficiency. Finally, we had caught a break. And none sooner. The Ying recognized that we were not going down without a serious fight. With the creation of the Light Beam, they knew we finally had a slim advantage, so they took it from us violently. Even with this new weapon and better armor, they attacked us and started to possess us, creating Luminoth Darklings that attacked the Ilk without remorse, spilling Luminoth blood in our most cherished locations. We were eventually able to develop shielding that could allow us to self-terminate to avoid being possessed, but it came to me too late. My mother and father were out in the local market trying to help forge copies of the Light Beam amongst some military officials one day. I was heading home after putting together a fresh shipment of light beacons when I heard a terrible scream. When I got within view of everything, the sight shook me to my core. I saw my father, laying on the ground in a pool of blood, his body twitching slightly before stopping, and my mother had been overtaken by a dark aura that stained her body black, attacking the other soldiers and tearing into them like a wild animal. She had been possessed to create a darkling out of nowhere, and now I was standing face to face with her. Most would have stood there in shock, leaving themselves open to attack. I was not most people. I had done some training for the Metroid conscription that had been going on at that time. The war had grown so desperate that even children were being trained for combat in case they were needed. And yes, they were needed. One of the present soldiers had a light beam on him at the moment, and I knew it was my only hope. Without a word, I dove out of the side of my mother towards the weapon and grabbed it, pointed it right at her, and fired. Over, and over, and over again, using what little ammo was left in it. Until the monster, yes, not my mother, the monster, let out an agonizing scream before falling to the ground, dead. It took a few good minutes for it all to sink in. What had just happened, the bodies, what I had done. By the time brothers had arrived to the scene, they looked to me, the bodies, what used to be my mother, and they all just backed away. I was given no choice. I would not stand to let these monsters do this. And in the process, I lost the two people I loved the most in my life. I expected that I would be punished for this, as it was still an act of murder. But instead of all things, I was taken to the Great Temple at request of Yumos. And there we spoke to each other on the topic of the incident and why I was there in the first place. Yumos had witnessed the incident from the top of the Great Temple and knew what I had done was in self-defense. He commended me for doing what was needed to neutralize the threat, even if it had been my own family, and he knew the pain I was in. The pain of losing your family. He always knew. Compared to his predecessor, Yumos was an incredibly compassionate soul. A man that stood not for war, but for the creation of peace, even if violence had to be the tool for it. He wanted to be the way it was before the Ing, a time of prosperity once more. And looking to me, oddly enough his senior in age, he asked for my hand to help make that happen. I was to be trained by the best warriors we had to offer, to finally be given the chance to make a difference that I had fought for with his predecessor. And to that, I vowed to not let him down. I would become the best of them all as quickly as I could. I made that promise to myself. And I did not break it. Most recruits for military service would have needed full cycles for proper extensive training, but we had none of that, and thus could only be given the basics at best. But with nothing left for me to lose, nothing to look back to, I threw myself into the fray. With each passing day, I would not let myself be beaten. I cannot recall all the battles that I waged with the Ing in my time, not for the lack of them, but for the fact that battle was only my life now. It was not the life that I had been made for, the cherished memories that I would recall in every battle to remind myself what I was fighting for. Battle was a blur. Only the times of years gone by held value in memory. All that I gained was skill and expertise, to be an Ing-slaying machine for the sake of having more of those times one day. And every single day, the more I focused on it all, the more it felt like I was getting tunnel vision, as if the light of Aether was all I could see now, the darkness like shadows writhing across its form. Shadows that needed to be totally and completely obliterated. I made new friends, soldiers of all shapes, sizes, ages, yes, even ages. The battles kept raging on, and it felt like it would not end in our favor at all. No matter how much we fought, the droves of beasts kept coming by the day, and we were running low on any and all ammunition that we could even get access to. Eventually, I claimed the lives of so many Ing that in my time, my rank rose through the others, a reputation coming upon me as a great warrior. A champion of Aether. I killed many of the beasts, their puppets, their leaders. They feared me, I could sense it. I protected all that was left of my people, and every kill made my hatred for them grow with every fight. But I knew it was hopeless. They had us outnumbered to a degree so vast that I dare not even think of it now. We could only hope that a solution to this nightmare would eventually reveal itself. And indeed, in time, something did. We learned that the true leader of the Ing, the emperor of their people, resided in a place we came to call the Sky Temple, a dark, twisted mockery of the great temple of our world, and that the doorway to it was guarded by 10 keys that had been scattered across the habitable world of our planet. Moreover, we learned that a large portion of Aether's planetary energy was now stored there, and if we could get it back, we could finally turn the tide of war and defeat the monster once and for all. It was with this information that we planned out everything, an invasion to find the keys, open the doors, and take back what belonged to us. And not a moment later, even greater news had come to us. Our brightest minds had finally finished the device that would save our world, the Energy Transfer Module. With it, we could absorb and take back the light that had been stolen from us. And with all of that, we now had a way to end the war, once and for all. The day we were set to go out and fulfill our mission, I was given new powers and upgrades to ensure that I could lead us to victory. I was given the Gravity Boost, Dark Visor, Seeker Missile, and the Annihilator Beam on top of my Dark Suit armor. Special tools designed to track and destroy the Ing, powers that allow me and others to scour the depths of our world for the 10 keys to the Sky Temple. I was not alone, but with 9 others, and together we would scour the reaches of our world for these keys. And to me was given the Energy Transfer Module. That day, though, I realized that the war had done something to me. Something that I knew could spur me to victory, but also left me wounded in my heart. I can remember so fondly the days of peace, time with my family, and the way that life once was. And yet, in the strangest turn of events for me, the fighting, the war, I could barely remember anything. Only my parents' death stood out to me. To me, it was a sign that this was not the path I was meant to tread. I wanted to be an acolyte, a scholar, one who gazed up at the stars in the sky, and maybe one day could meet the people that may have lived around those beacons of light. I never wanted any part of this. No one did. But we had no choice. This was about us now, our people, rising to finally vanquish the darkness from our world. We would not back down. We would not go out without a fight. Through vigilance and strength, we create peace. We set out as early as we could on our final journey. I, with the other 9 key bearers, wished for the light to shine upon us as we ventured outward to find our keys, and to meet together at the base of the Sky Temple. This was our moment of glory, our time to shine. We were not prepared for what was to come. As I found myself searching frantically for a key, I would be assaulted by the lesser vermin of the Ing on my entire journey. I could not fight both of them, as I only had so much ammunition to spare, so I did everything that I possibly could in order to combat them physically. I snuck around their camps and smaller bases, keeping my back to the stone walls of the Sky Temple grounds, and in my actions, I would find myself amongst the dead, corpses of our kind scattered everywhere. As I searched the grounds, I would come across a strange sight. Through my dark visor, I spied every hidden enemy that would dare to approach me, avoiding direct confrontation, as I came across a narrow passage that was different. There were merely tentacles of darkness inside of it, and as I would walk to the other side of it, I would find myself at a strange altar in place where the Hall of Honored Dead was. No, not an altar. A gateway! This must have been the place where the scouts had discovered the way to the Sky Temple. As I peered through my visor, I could see a vile, eyeball-like entity floating, hidden in the darkness. Swiftly, I destroyed it and found one of the keys that had been left behind by it. No wonder this one had not been seen. It was literally hiding in the darkness itself, in dimensional flux, likely placed there by the rest of its ilk. But why? The sound of a terrible roaring cry is what would answer my statement, as I was suddenly surrounded by the monsters. This had been a trap! An ambush! I attempted to telepathically contact the others, but I felt my blood run cold when I felt and heard almost nothing. Only the slightest hints of spirit and thought, fading away from scattered locations across our world. They were dead, weren't they? This wasn't just happening to me. Somehow, They knew that we were coming. Maybe not now, but they must have seen the scouts. They knew that we knew, and they had been planning right alongside us this entire time. I had no time to waste. With every ounce of skill and power I could muster, I fired at the horde coming upon me, the lesser ranks, their beasts, darklings, the hunters, everything that came at me, I destroyed with vicious prejudice, aiming to eradicate them all. Even if I would be left without ammunition for the Sky Temple, if I could just insert my key, it could be a step. I could return home. We could try and regroup. I had to think positively. I had to believe. But as I fought with every valiant sense in me, I could feel a claw pierce my torso. I fired again and again, only for another to strike my left shoulder. Another to my right leg. Another to the other. The blows kept coming as I fired over and over again, wiping out the horde bit by bit. Only for one to pierce my chest, as I finally killed the last of the horde that ambushed me. But it was too late. I inserted my key into one of the 10 slots, slumping down to its base, as I desperately tried to call out to the other key bearers. But I could not feel more than wisps of spirit and mind still. The pain had made my mind hazy, and I was forced to accept the grim likelihood that they were gone. We failed. In my last moments, I created a telepathic recording in my mind, so if any Luminoth, or other, would ever come to find me and read my mind, and the keyhole surrounding me, I would leave them something to succeed where we did not. Soon I shall pass to the final rest. My key is in place. Through my spiritual link to the others, I know where their bodies lie. I shall leave this knowledge that their last location in the dark world can be known. May this knowledge lead our warriors to the Sky Temple keys. The time draws near. Hear the words of A-Kul, she they call champion of Aether. Know that my warriors fought and died with uncommon valor. Do not look unkindly upon their failure, for they died to save us all. This is where the story of A-Kul sadly comes to an end. She fought with her brethren, living the life of a warrior not of choice but of duress and honor, for the sake of her race. It is a shame that she never got the chance to see the liberation of Illuminoth from darkness. But that might not be entirely true. In fact, as we wrap this story up, there is one final twist I would like to note here. When A-Kul was killed, all of her special upgrades, armor, and weapons were taken from her and scattered across the breadth of Dark Aether among other places, and that includes the energy transfer module, which would be taken by the Ying and used to steal the planetary energy from the energy controllers on Aether. The last that stood in the way of the Ying totally destroying the Light World, the Great Temple, was going to be taken by force, killing the last sentinel of the Luminoth, Umos. But this was not to pass, for the Hunter would intervene and kill the Dark Alpha Splinter that had been given the module, freeing it from the beast. However, something very unusual would occur after that. As the Hunter would touch the device, it wasn't just absorbed into her system automatically. The object actually wobbled and moved through the air around her for a moment, before forcibly merging with her systems. Now, this module was designed as a tool, and a tool alone, so why would it react that way after she merely touched it? We have evidence in the Temples of Aether that even as Illuminoth records a message of some sort for later reading after they are dead, these program recordings are not entirely recordings at all. It seems that a part of their essence, a fragment of their spirit, is imbued into these devices so they can act with a sense of being and purpose, knowing that they speak from beyond the grave, and with the power to permanently shut themselves down if they feel the message and purpose has finally been completed. In that sense, maybe the energy transfer module is something similar. The moment that a being of the light came to it and interacted with it, perhaps in some tiny way, a fragment of A-Kul's spirit lingered within. A fragment that drove the device into the Hunter not just as a tool, but as the last hope for the Luminoth entirely, a final act of defiance against the Ying. In the end, it is hard to say for sure, but A-Kul is an example where, just because another hero comes to save the day, it never means that we should forget the heroes that tried. And for A-Kul, now that their race has finally been saved, I can only hope that she now rests peacefully, and perhaps fittingly, as part of the light of Aether for all of eternity. Thank you all for watching this video. We here at Space Pirate Science Team take our work very seriously, and we genuinely wish to be as informative as possible when it comes to the work we conduct here, for both ourselves and in the name of science. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment to help us get greater recognition out there to inform the greater populace of the universe as a whole. Also, feel free to keep track of us through Twitter, as we'll be posting notices there every time something new is submitted for your viewing pleasure. We hope to see you all in the next video, no matter what world it may take us to.